everyone, welcome back to CHAOSScast, the Chaos Community podcast where we share use cases and experiences that make us open source community health. On the panel today, we have me, Harmony Elendo, we have Maryblessing, we have Georg, we have Alice, and you yourself that's also listening here on the panel today. Thanks for joining in. Hi, Georg. How are you?
Oh, doing good. Thank you, Harmony. Great to be with you again. Great to be with you all and recording today's episode. It's been a fun journey. I'm happy to reflect back on the past years of CHAOSScast. I'm no longer on the board of Chaos. So Harmony, congratulations on your election to the Chaos board. So lots of things are happening. I'm happy to dive in. I'm going to pass it on to Maryblessing. Welcome, Maryblessing.
Hi, dear. Thank you. I'm excited to be joining you all on today's panel talking about the exciting things happening in the Chaos community. And yeah, I'm really excited to go deep into the conversation. And hi, Alice.
Hey, everyone. Yeah, it's good to be back in the saddle recording another episode, although it's going to be our last one for a while. It's always nice to tie back on things and have a good conversation with friends and enjoy the memories that we've made making the podcast. So yeah, really glad to be here.
Hi, everyone. It's quite emotional in the panel today. And thank you for congratulating me. Again, just to introduce myself, my name is Harmony. I'm a project and product manager, a member of Chaos board, newly elected. And also, I lead the Chaos Technical Writers Focus Group. It's a pleasure to have you today. This is going to be our last podcast for a while. Just join us as we have various conversations around it. Hi, Alice.
Yeah, so I think several of us have alluded to the fact that this is going to be the last podcast for a while. We decided to do an episode to put a formal pause on the CHAOSScast podcast by recording a special episode. So CHAOSScast will be taking an indefinite break, and we have no current plans to restart it. And before we start the episode, I just wanted to take a few minutes to share some thoughts with you on behalf of everyone who's been involved. So producing the podcast has been a really rewarding experience, and we are grateful to everyone who's listened, contributed, and joined us in conversation over the years. At this time, however, we have not been able to determine that the podcast is delivering enough value to the community to justify the time and financial resources required to sustain it. But if there is a clear community need that emerges in the future, we would be very excited to explore bringing it back, maybe even in a new form. So until then, for everyone who has been listening and everyone who's been contributing, we send our thanks to you and grateful good wishes to you for being part of the Chaos community that created CHAOSScast. And we still have all that wonderful back catalogue. So CHAOSScast is not being... It's still going to be there forever, for as long as we get the hosting right. So, yeah, that's where we're at with CHAOSScast.
Thank you, Alice, for that brief intro, deeply. Before we clock out, we have a lot to talk about so that we would give you in-depth of how far we've come, where we are currently. We can't really tell you where we're going, but where, and we're going to have these conversations together with the people on the panel. Beginning with that, I want to talk about the history, and I would want to call Georg to give us a brief history about CHAOSScast up to this time.
Yeah, I'm happy to talk about our history with the podcast, how we came to create it, and how it evolved over the years. The first episode we published on May 1st, 2020. That is now more than 6 years ago. So we've had quite a long run. And why did we start this in the first place? When we started the Chaos community back, I think 3 years before, 2017, we had a lot of conversations. And a lot of people were looking at open source community health, and they were doing things. And we were starting the Chaos community to pull those efforts together. And we had fantastic conversations within our working group meetings, and we learned a lot from many different peoples and companies and what they were doing and how they were doing it, how they were thinking about metrics and analyzing projects and communities, what to do with it, how it drove decision making. And the question I always kept coming back to is, how do we not just build out software and metrics and guides within the CHAOSS community, but how do we share the experiences? How do we share the knowledge that people have gained? How do we share the community aspect of having these conversations and preserve it in a way that more people can join, even when they're not in the meetings? At first, I thought, hey, let's have everyone write blog posts. And if you've ever tried to get people to write anything, it is really difficult. But we were able to have conversations and say, hey, let's jump on a Zoom call, have a conversation about what you're working on. And then we started recording these as podcast episodes. And I was inspired by the Sustain OSS podcast, and huge shout out to what they're doing at the Sustain OSS community. And they had a sponsor and a network for podcasts. And so we started CHAOSScast as part of this podcasting network. It fell apart at some point, but CHAOSScast survived. And I'm very glad for that. And there are many different things that we did to make sure CHAOSScast could survive for all these years, more than 6 years now. And I want to reflect on the very important decision at the very beginning to make this a community podcast. As the person who drove it forward, I could have said, hey, this is the Georg podcast or the metrics podcast by Georg or something like that. By making it the deliberate community podcast, we were able to keep the podcast alive. If it had been mine, it would have fallen apart and been done a long time ago. It is a real community effort. And we did this from the very beginning by having a logo contest. What should the logo be of the CHAOSS Community podcast? And if you listen to episode number 26, we interview Luis Canas-Diaz, who submitted the winning design. We also made sure to always have more than one organizer. So we started with 3 organizers, and we always shared in the work of finding guests on discussing the topics and facilitating the conversations. I always like to pull in community members. So we had the organizers that shepherded the organizing, getting guests, but then we also had panelists and bring in voices from the community so we can have a back and forth and a conversation. And I always like to not even plan out what we're going to say, just see where the conversation takes us. We had a few ideas of topics we wanted to touch on and then let the conversation unfold. So really the podcast was created with the intention, I think we did a really good job at that, of elevating voices of the community members and bringing the deep conversations that we had in the community, preserve those and make them available more broadly. So that's kind of the background of how we started the podcast.
Yeah, absolutely. You and everyone else did a very good job, elevating the voices of community members. I personally been on the podcast a couple of times. Really found it very interesting, sharing my experience to the wider audience. And even though they are not in the room, it's really great.
Yeah, it's actually very, very great. The podcast has grown, and not just grown as well, it has also educated people, passed a lot of information. Personally, I learned a lot of things from speaking to guests, also learning things from a different perspective and all of that. The other things that stood out for me in the podcast were we had different programs that were chaired by either community members or people that had something going on. For instance, I led the 20 Minutes with CHAOSS Africa. We got to understand how the people from the African continent contribute to metrics, their understanding, and also the contributions that they did on the podcast. And I think we even had the practitioner guide series as well. Yeah, it's just like a lot. And it was even fun organizing with Alice most of the time. And it's been an amazing journey. It started before I joined the community, and I've contributed squarely my own section of the puzzle up to this time. And it's been beautiful. Beautiful is the word and moment. Yeah, it is.
Yeah, there's definitely been a huge amount of value in its ability to build a community, despite whether it was getting the listenership and so on that we wanted it to. I think in the making of it, a really excellent effect on building communities, because I was asked by Dawn to take it on around probably about this time 2 years ago, because she'd been doing it. And I don't know when she started doing it, but it seemed to me that there had been quite a tradition of finding a replacement or bringing someone on to share the work. And I think it created a lot of, finding the people to come on the podcast, thinking about what topics we could talk about, using it as a venue for sharing what had happened at events, for talking in more depth about some of the work that had been going on that was written. So the practitioner's guides is an example of that. New working groups that were coming up. And there's something about having to be recorded while having a conversation that makes you really sort of focus on actually really preparing and getting your thoughts into a good order, and being able to ask, if you're a host, to ask good questions, and if you're a guest, to think about how you want to share the information that you have and how you want to have conversations with other people about the topics that you're talking about. And that is something unique that a podcast does. So I'm really glad that we have this huge back catalogue of, I think it's 132 episodes. This will be the 133rd, which is a great resource that will be there. Even if you're just listening, you will get to know the people of CHAOSS. And I think that was a really nice thing. Yeah, it's definitely been great. And for me, it was probably like one of the first things that I did on my own as an independent volunteer with open source. And so that was a great way for me to see open source at its best and volunteering at its best, and the opportunity to work across so many different continents, because we're involving the Asia chapter as well in some of the podcasts. So yeah, very nice experience for me personally.
Thank you.
Yes, thank you for taking over and driving the podcast. It all comes back to the people in the community. And I love what you said about how recording the podcast changes a little bit perspective. Because when I was at a conference and I was talking with people, and I would come across someone who shared a really interesting story, I would be like, would you come on our podcast? I would love to hear your story.
Have you on the podcast.
Exactly. Recording the podcast and having that was always another layer of connecting with people. And I think you can see that when you listen to our episodes. We always have the value add at the very end. And we purposely included a section value adds at the end where whoever was on the podcast could just share about what is currently adding value to their life, humanize them, and connect on a more personal level, where we don't just talk about the heavy topics or the technical aspects, but we get to talk about us.
Speaking of talking about us, if everyone listening have noticed so far, I think I'm like the neutral person here. Georg, Alison, Hawani has had to host the podcast over the years, which is really beautiful. I think this has probably been my fourth or fifth time coming back onto this stage. And it's always humbling, really. As a community member and contributor, I have enjoyed listening to this podcast, but obviously not the ones I'm in, because I find my own voice cringe when I listen to it after the recording is out. So I tend to listen to all that. And I think my favorite series has been the practitioner guides. There was just so much value in them. There's, of course, the blog posts that Dr. Down usually put together, but even hearing her talk about these things, the experiences, and the entire practitioner guide series has been very, very wonderful. I also like the value add. Sometimes I tend to pick a few things about people when I hear them talk about value add beats. So that's really personal. And I really enjoyed that part of the podcast, not making it overly technical or overly serious, right? But also like helping me connect back to the people, because chaos is so broad. And I just feel like there's a lot of moving parts in chaos that I barely keep up with. So like even hearing people talk about the things they do and how they've been using the resources that we have in the community, this podcast has definitely helped to bring those experiences forward, even when I personally am not observing or I'm not seeing them.
So there have actually been a lot of like highlights from folks, both people that have been on the podcast and people that have not yet been on the podcast. And for me personally, beyond the value that the podcast actually creates, there are also other interconnected values. Like I got to collaborate with Alice. We had beautiful moments that we shared and we get to like learn. I also got to like collaborate and make friends with people like Georg. I love amazing folks, right? So it's not just about hosting the podcast or even organizing them. I think the part of organizing them is debating on the topic. And to be very honest, we sometimes don't even know the title of the episode till after it's recorded. So yeah, it's been fun. And yes, the value adds is something that I try to see if I can try something out over time. So thank you for staying with us up to this moment. I think if we have more highlights to share, please don't want to share.
I want to extend a thank you also, not just to the panelists and the guests that we had and the listeners who've been part of the journey. I just want to give a big shout out to Paul Barr from Peachtree Sound, who edited every single episode. And he always makes us sound professional and polished. And
shout out to Paul.
Shout out to Paul.
Yes. Well, here's the thing. Okay. We start recording and then I say, okay, Paul just joined us. He's not actually in the Zoom call, but I said, Paul just joined us and we can talk with him as if he was here. We can ask him to please take out when we stumble or when we want to.
Oh, Georg. There's the magic word that Elizabeth would say. Once you say that, Paul knows when to cut it off.
Yeah, and it's Paul.
Edit Paul, yeah.
So as a listener, you have not heard those comments because Paul has dutifully and beautifully removed them. But he makes sure that the audio from our microphones sparkle in your headphones. So Paul, thank you. I'm speaking to you directly. Thank you for being part of this journey. You've always had wonderful advice on how to position the microphone or how to get a better quality out or how to facilitate. I've learned a lot from you. So thank you.
Thank you, Paul. Alice, do you have anything to say? Any special highlight? I feel like you have highlights too.
Oh, well, I'll add my thanks to Paul. Yes, he's been extremely supportive, way beyond what he needed to. And he even shared that he was a fan of Christmas crackers, which is not common in America. So I was glad that he was supportive of the mention that we had of Christmas crackers on one of our episodes. In terms of highlights, I think my main highlight has been just working with Harmony and everybody else together. That's been the best thing. But I really have enjoyed learning about new topics and so on. One episode that was a highlight, but I like things to be quite organized and things. But I think we did one episode that may have been a Christmas special, or it may have been the 100th episode, which maybe did come out around Christmas actually. And we had actually quite a lot of people on, and it was like slightly chaotic, which, is on brand. But that sort of stands out in my mind a little bit. So that was pretty nice.
Thank you very much, Alice. It's actually a pleasure organizing the podcast too. It's been a beautiful moment. So let's look into our stats so far that we've had in the podcast. Overall, we have 37,000 total downloads over 832 episodes. And on average, we'd have 28 downloads per episode. The most downloaded episode with 933 downloads was episode 31, about marketing metrics for open source foundation and projects.
Oh yeah, episode 31. That was a good one. It was about marketing metrics for open source foundations and projects, which resulted from a collaboration between CHAOSS and GNOME and KDE. where working with Sri Ramakrishna and Neo Coloctronis, we built out metrics for the GNOME and KDE communities as a collaboration with Chaos. So that was a fun one. And yeah, super stoked. That was the highest downloaded episode with 933 downloads. What other stats do you have for us?
The second most downloaded episode with 586 downloads was episode 1, our Hello World episode where we introduced Chaos and the podcast. A new episode could get between 8 and 50 downloads on the first day, and then fewer the following days, all thanks to you, the listeners. With few exceptions, we kept the length of each episode between 20 and 50 minutes. Thank you for hearing our voice and enjoying the value that we provide on that one. By geography, CHAOSScast was downloaded about 60% from within the United States and 40% in other countries. The second highest ranked download location is Germany with 5%. Big shout out to all of our listeners. Statistics per episode have been consistent throughout the 6 years of publishing the podcast. Within the first 90 days, an episode could be downloaded around 80 to 120 times. We have 3 clear outliner. Episode 31 that I mentioned prior before now was also downloaded 687 times within the first week alone. Another popular episode was episode 103 with 281 downloads in the first 90 days, and episode 30 with 258 downloads in the first 90 days. All of this is because you saw value in what we share here, and you've also listened to everything that we've spoken so far from our guests, community members, hosts, organizers, including Paul, our editor, all of this. We say thank you. Thank you very much for being part of us up to this moment.
I was wondering before we go into the value adds, if I could ask, what are you all planning to do next? Harmony, I assume you are going to be part of the Chaos community for quite a while. You just joined the Chaos board. What's in your future within Chaos and professionally?
So, personally, as a member of the board, there are a couple of things I want to drive in the community, especially when it has to do with much more engagement, community participation, diversity, and a lot more amazing stuff. Also pushing out Chaos across the globe. We have been able to expand in a couple of chapters. I think we have about 3. I think we can do more and we can preach more about open source across the world, not just about metrics itself, which is our core primary objective on what we do here, but also to bring folks from around the globe together to contribute to various projects, be part of the community, learn, grow, and improve. Personally, in my career path, to what I'm doing beyond contributing to open source, I'm getting involved. I'm doing more in managing product as a product manager, managing technical projects and programs, both in the open source industry and also in the financial industry. I'm always happy to join in, or please share opportunities if there's any you'd love me to be part of, especially within open source. I would love to work in open source and also things that are woven around open source, companies, programs, just a lot. I love contributing and I want to do that majorly as I grow in my career. Thank you. Hi, Alice. What's next for you?
So I'm very fortunate at the moment that since I started volunteering with Chaos and also with the To-Do group, pretty shortly after that, I started being paid for working in open source, which was really such a privilege because all the money comes from donations. And so that's working with the FreeBSD Foundation, which is FreeBSD as an operating system. And so I'm going to continue doing that. That work has recently taken me into some super, super interesting areas. One is the EU Cyber Resilience Act. So I'm now a bit of a geek about that particular piece of regulation. And I've been going to Brussels from time to time. I think I'll be going again in September to catch up on like the latest developments of that coming into force or some parts of that coming in force. Also, another thing that's been pretty interesting is AI-assisted vulnerability discovery in open source. So I'm working with the FreeBSD project a little bit on that at the moment, and that's being funded by a really interesting group in the Linux Foundation. It's actually part of OpenSSF. It's called the Alpha Omega Project, or Omega, depending on how you like to say it. And that is a fund that's been provided by a number of the large tech companies to help open source projects discover vulnerabilities before other people do using AI assisted tooling. And so that's been really, really interesting as well, getting to kind of see, be on the front line of seeing what's going on that side of things. And I definitely recommend anyone who's interested in that to check out the Alpha Omega project. I'm still volunteering with a to-do group. I don't have anything going on for Chaos right now, but I will be lurking at the very least and seeing what's going on. That seems interesting. How about you, Maryblessing?
Yeah, I thought that was the right sound. Okay, I mean, congratulations, Alice, on all of the wins. Yeah, for me, it is odd if I say I don't know what I want to do. I don't know, but like just with Harmony, I know I want to stay long-term in open source, but how to go about that? I have zero idea yet. But I was at a conference in the UK and one of the speakers talked about just keep on doing things and one day it will all make sense. So yeah, I will just keep at it. I am still volunteering with Chaos. However, there is the newly renewed grant from Sloan, and I will be joining Elizabeth and Ruth and Evia to form the community management team with that grant. So I'm really excited and looking forward to it, hoping everything goes well. I do not currently have a full-time job. So yeah, just doing a bit of contract and looking out for a full-time role in open source and things around community management, engagement, programs management, and other exciting things. I'm also looking to go get a degree in data science. That's been the highlights of this quarter for me. A lot of planning and looking out for schools that I would really like to be a part of. So that's been the planning process for me. Yeah, I mean, other than that, things have been going really well. Also doing other volunteering stuff, research software communities, and that has been really exciting. So I think that's all that's going on with me right now.
Oh, so good to hear all the things you're up to and planning. I'm really excited for you all. I myself worked with Petrugia came to an end at the beginning of this year. So I have something new lined up. I'm not quite ready to talk about it at time of recording this episode, but maybe by the time we publish it, you can find out more on my LinkedIn profile. I'm quite excited about this opportunity where I get to take my experience from the technology side, from business, from community, and combine that all into a new role that I'm just super excited, but I don't want to spoil it right now. So come follow me on LinkedIn and we can always have a chat. If anyone wants to connect personally, I do like having virtual coffees. Just reach out and we'll find a time to sit down and catch up. Yeah, and with regards to Chaos, it is time to pass on the baton. I'm very happy that over the last 9 years that we have built the community, we're now at a point where we can elect board members. And so my term has ended. And yeah, I'm happy to see what the next generation is going to make of this community.
Thank you very much, Georg. And you should, if you're listening to this and you have like two minds in deciding if you're going to take Georg's over, which is virtual coffee, I would tell you that it's fun. Do well to take advantage of it. Yeah. And it's time for value adds. And I would want to start with Georg.
Well, thank you. My value add for this time is CHAOSScast related. My husband of 10 years occasionally listens to CHAOSScast, and whenever he mentions, oh, I heard you on CHAOSScast again, and he starts talking about the things that we talked about on the episode, every time it just makes me feel loved, and it also feels me connected. And that was a lot of motivation for me to keep going with recording CHAOSScast. So I know I'd stepped away for a while from CHAOSScast, but that encouragement at home had me come back and rejoin the organizers. So my husband and the personal encouragements at home is what my value add is.
Thank you very much, Georg.
I can go next, but yeah, my husband is not getting a shout out. No, he's very supportive. But if you wanted a shout out, he should have listened to the CHAOSScast, and he didn't do that. So the sowing was fun, but the reaping not so fun. Okay. My value add is international community, finding international community. I have worked and also volunteered in open source, and that has led me to connect with people from all over the world. So I regularly speak to people in Italy, Brazil, Ukraine, Canada, Finland, Nigeria, Taiwan, I could Japan, I could keep going. There's nobody in Antarctica yet, so come on, open source groups in Antarctica. We need more from your content. But yeah, it's really amazing. It's really humbling to have the technology these days to build community across such huge distances. And I feel like I'm a real time zone ninja these days, trying to organize people across different time zones as well. That's a skill I never thought that I would have. But yeah, it's been an absolute highlight of working first with multinational companies, but also with open source that spans across so many different countries and cultures. I think that's what I really like to hear about, the different cultures. So yeah, that's been a great value add to me.
Yeah. I would just like to say, I share with Alice her value add. Open source has really connected me with a lot of people that I don't know if I weren't part of the open source ecosystem, if I would be able to meet them. And even stepping out of my home country, even visiting these other countries and connecting with brilliant minds within the open source, open science spaces has really been amazing. And of course, the time zone thing is always a struggle, but it's cute. I find it really cute. Yeah, but for this podcast, my value add is just the excitement around planning a trip to a country that I've always wanted to go to. And yeah, that's the excitement for me right now.
I'm very much excited as you, Maryblessing. It's been amazing connecting with people around the globe. My value add is I have been reading about people's culture across, especially countries I would love to travel to, speak in, continent I've never been to, but I've spoken to people from there. So I would love to visit various countries, especially outside Africa. And I would take opportunities that comes outside there, especially if it's going to allow me to try out foods I've read about, recipes, or cakes that Alice have sent me pictures of that I never
We
ate.
have a foodie.
Or dance with people, strangers, and party. I think there's a lot of beautiful things around the world, and I want to not just read about them, I want to experience them. So yeah, that's my value add. So if you have the opportunity to experience in these things, have me at the back of your heart because I'm cheering you by the side.
Harmony, my guest room is always available when you find yourself in the Midwest. Come on over.
Yeah, we got an apartment.
Yes, speaking of apartments, I just recently came across this platform that allows you to babysit people to stay in their house for free and eat free meals. So I don't know if it's of interest to anyone out there, but yeah, just thought about this.
Please share the link. Also, we'll put it on the show notes. Go help somebody. Me, precisely, or somebody else. Yeah. Okay, go ahead, Alice.
And so that is the end of today's podcast. For now, this is the last episode for some time. Thank you for joining us today and over the last years. We hope you enjoyed CHAOSScast as much as we did. Until next time, your Chaos community.